I've often talked about the importance of cultivating compassion, and not just toward others, but also toward ourselves. I've talked about how compassion can change society if we could all be a little more kind, a little more loving, a little more understanding and forgiving. And I think you all get that. I think most of us can agree on how important it is to cultivate compassion. But with that being said, it can also be very difficult at times to actually practice compassion in real life, especially when we're dealing with people who are irritating, inconsiderate, or self absorbed, or just difficult to understand. In those moments, it can feel challenging to be compassionate. We might even catch ourselves reacting with judgment, aggravation, or animosity. So I just want to share something that I've always found helpful in these kinds of situations. It's an old saying and a gentle reminder that compassion begins with the understanding that we all suffer. When we're struggling to be compassionate towards someone, it's often because we're focused on the surface behavior, what they said, how they acted, how inconsiderate or frustrating or disappointing they seem to be in that moment. But this saying invites us to look a little deeper and to ask, why are they like this? What might be beneath their behavior? What burden might they be carrying? Because suffering isn't always obvious. Sometimes it looks like irritability or insensitivity. Sometimes it looks like defensiveness. Sometimes it looks like arrogance, criticism, or condescension. Something I like to remind myself is that when someone is truly happy, they're never cruel or unkind. And so anyone who behaves in ways that lack compassion must be suffering in some way. And all of this ties in closely with something I was just talking about recently, which is learning to love people where they are. Because something I mentioned is that loving people doesn't mean approving of everything they do. It doesn't mean excusing or tolerating bad behavior. It simply means seeing them as fellow human beings who are trying to navigate through life, oftentimes without having the proper tools or knowledge of how to navigate, who are struggling in ways we may not even know, who may be carrying the pain of unhealed wounds they never speak of, and who are doing the best they can from their current level of awareness. One of the reasons compassion can feel so difficult is because we often get so wrapped up in our own suffering that we forget that others suffer as well. In those moments, we're feeling the hurt that comes in response to how the other person has spoken or behaved. But what we fail to see is how their own pain, fear, or unmet needs might be shaping their behavior in that moment. And again, this isn't about minimizing your own experience. You have to honor what you feel. You have to honor your own needs. You have to stand firm in your boundaries and not let someone overstep them. Compassion doesn't cancel out discernment, but it can soften our anger and our judgments, and can even help us to let go of old resentments, reducing our own suffering in the process. So, whenever I find myself dealing with someone difficult, I try to remind myself I may not know this person's entire life story. I may not know everything that they've endured. I may not know exactly what might be giving rise to their behavior. But one thing I do know is this: we all suffer in life. And when I remember that everyone suffers, I can feel my whole being soften in that moment. I become less reactive, less invested in needing to be right, less inclined to judge others or to hold on to some resentment. And sometimes that's all compassion is, not some big emotional response, but just a softening of oneself in the recognition of our shared humanity. So, next time you find yourself dealing with someone who seems difficult, you don't have to try to be compassionate. Just remember that we all suffer. And whatever this person is saying or doing, it may just be an expression of their suffering. If this video resonated with you, check out one of these videos next. And if you find value in this content, be sure to like, share, and subscribe.